Welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast. You're in the right place if you're a growth-seeking being who acknowledges the challenges and delights of your humanity on the path to an ever more conscious life. If you want to feel inspired to love and accept yourself, to feel free to be and express you in all your brilliance, if you want to truly value yourself and others and feel energized and alive both at home and in the world, then sit back and take a breath as you explore and grow the brilliance of your beautiful human self with your host, the father of non-personal awareness and creator of the NPA process, Joel Young.
Hello, and welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast with me, Joel Young. This is episode 40, the Big 40. And today I'm going to be sharing with you a community call. I do regular community calls twice a month, and I thought I'd share this one with you today. It's pretty rich in content, with topics covering things like divine dissatisfaction, the power of practice and how to soften your relationship with your mind, and the secret to highly leveraged action and effortless abundance. I also cover some forms of meditation and quite a bit more. So it's quite a jam-packed episode, really. It starts off with sort of a welcome and then a spew by one of the participants. Now, spew is a word I use in NPA, and it's followed by group NPA. So I haven't included the words in there because it would take a little while to go through the process. But if you do want to get hold of the words of the NPA process, then go ahead and either come to the show notes, which will have also a layout of where everything is within this call. They'll be at www.beabrillianthuman.com/40, or you can always go to my main website, joelyoungmpa.com, and you can download the NPA sheet for free there and have a play with it. So, really, this is a series of reflections and conversations. I hope that something in there really moves you, touches you, resonates with you at this time in your life. So let's dive into it. Anyway, let's do a quick check-in. We're on a general call, so as you all know, then it's a chance to do some group process work if that's there, and of course, even though you're all old hands, if there's any general questions about NPA or even life in general, then I'm available here. Oh, we've got a bit of an echo. So let me do a quick check-in, just a quick how you're doing this evening, and then we'll go into spews afterwards. Thank you, Maggie, how about you?
I'm okay. I just it's been frustrating. I have frustrating days with mechanical things for some reason, and still trying to settle in. I still feel like something's off. I don't know what it is. Anyway, just not grounded or feel like I'm in the right place. I'm not saying the move was a bad thing to do. I don't think it was, but it doesn't feel right yet. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so still getting the roots down, but they're not down yet. Mind you, I say that.
Not.
I've moved. I often say I'm a bit of a nomad, really. I think the longest I ever been in one place was when I was I guess when I was a child in one place, and then the longest since then has been 6 years. There's only two places I've ever put my roots down, which was when I was a kid, and then when I moved up to Norwich with my first wife, and we actually bought the house, and I put my roots down. But then life happened. I don't think I have since.
Yeah.
I think I'm not doing too bad here in Skipton. I'm enjoying it, but I still wouldn't say I've got that, that I'm here. But I do love it at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's a distinction.
I've been the same way. Yeah, I've been the same way. And maybe it's just, I don't love it here. I felt like it was necessary to come here. So, I don't know, Joel. It's just very sort of unnerving. And all the changes I have to go through and get a car and the whole bit, Anyway, I don't know when it'll settle. Okay. At least so that I feel that it's okay. It doesn't have to feel, over the moon. But, yeah.
Okay. So, So I'm gonna jump right in because I heard settle, as a potential letting in cookie cutter. Should we just all NPA settle? What do you reckon? All right.
Yep.
So what I'll do is I'll do what we usually do in these circumstances. Join me and Maggie if it resonates, and press 3 when you're done, and then we'll all know we're ready. All right. Let's do it. Let's let in settle. You ready, Maggie?
Yeah, I'm ready.
This settle.
This settle.
This energy of settle. Okay, so Maggie, what did you experience there?
Well, it's kind of, I was going to say unsettling. Anyway, at first I saw like a barbed wire fence, and I was just looking through it at a field or something. There may have been a cow there, I'm not sure. But then the words came, I can't settle and I need to wander. And I feel unsettled. So there you go.
Well, it's an interesting word. I mean, it had animation because there's two meanings to it, aren't there? I mean, if you look at it in sort of classic, what does settle mean? Because you can settle as in settle down and rest, and then there's settling for something, isn't there? Where you kind of settle for something which isn't necessarily the truth. So it's interesting in that way, where, I mean, I think for me, on one hand, we talked about how I'm kind of a wanderer. So on one hand, I have that part of me which is like has a sort of homeboy aspect to him, and then I have the kind of wild child roaming gypsy man. And I kind of, and one of the things that I suppose I have come to terms with is that it's phasial. So there's times I like to be settled, and there's times when I get bored of being settled and need to move. And rather than sort of polarizing it and sort of saying I should be this or I should be that, it comes back to honoring what's really here and dropping the judgment of it and those kind of things. So I mean, right now with the move, whether it's inspired by a have to or whatever, the universe and you have put you where you are to, and then in this moment with the NPA, it's like, well, maybe there's what's coming in with it is an okayness to not be settled in the settling down way, but just being with what is. That's what comes to me anyway.
Okay.
Food for thought.
Yeah, thanks.
Joanna, what did you experience?
Be okay with what you're...
Really be okay with unsettledness. I mean, that may be part of it for you. Is I think I had to come to grips with my sort of innate unsettledness. I've been working a lot recently with satisfaction, which is similar. So the awareness that was a sort of a sense of dissatisfied, which was sort of like a sort of an undercurrent that sort of did a bit of saboteuring and those kind of things. And as I worked with satisfaction, I realized that, again, very similar to the wildness versus the settledness, there's a divine dissatisfaction. You can, like, in the moment, you can be satisfied with what is, and then there's the urge to grow, the urge to expand. And when the urge comes to expand, you sort of see beyond what is, and it causes you to be divinely dissatisfied. And it's that paradox of just kind of, and that's the whole wholeness piece of embracing that I can be satisfied where I am and yet unsatisfied in a way that inspires me to more. Or I can be settled and yet unsettled in a way which means that there's a movement somewhere in me in alignment, and that's the key, is to find in alignment with my source, my higher self, whatever you want to call that, to move or to shift things or to change. Because all of you on this call, all of you that engage with NPA or similar things, have that evolutionary impulse, that part of you that wants to grow. And some people don't have that. They're fine with just rolling along and settling with what is. Although I wouldn't necessarily see it that way, but if there is that soul urge to grow, then you're going to meet these paradoxes again and again and again. So that's
wonderful.
My experience. Okay, Gulara, how about you?
I resonated with the word a lot. I felt like, oh yes, I need to settle all these unsettled feelings. Kind of settle down in myself. But I resonated with the whole discussion around being dissatisfied. Like there's that sense in me that, on the face of it, things are very comfortable and okay, but then I am dissatisfied with what is, and it's likely to unsettle things and unsettle life, and I will have to perhaps settle elsewhere or whatever, I don't know. But yeah, the whole concept of settling for something, it's like, I think it's a pattern of mine, just to settle for whatever comes my way, and then I'm going to stick with it. So there is kind of a bit of negative connotation for me with settle. Settling down, it feels really terrifying. I don't feel I've ever put roots down anywhere. I think I've obviously had roots in my childhood, in the house where I grew up. But after that, I never trusted anywhere that I will be there long enough, or this is it, that I found what I've been searching for. This is the right place, this is the right person. I just never put any roots down. So, yeah, those are quite a lot of interesting themes for me. Thank you.
Well, yeah, again, just to reflect back there, it's like, and I seem to be sort of sharing a lot about my process tonight, there we go. But one of the things that I've been working a lot on in this arena is kind of, I guess, in the context of this cookie cutter, I'd say settling into self. So in NPA, we have the multiple perspectives model. So it's four, but basically it's three of them. So there's the personality, the soul, pure being, and then absolute. Absolute's irrelevant because there's no experience there. Personality is the stuff that that goes up, right, left, down, all the rest of it. The soul is the inspiration for growth because it's always expanding, always looking for the lesson, the journey, the growth. And the pure being is more the what isness. It's more that kind of steady presence. And so again, a lot of the work that I've been doing in the last, I guess, year, really, it's really coming, definitely the last 3 months, is really looking at sort of within the change, or to resolve the paradox of the changes, the shifts, and the circumstances beyond our personal control, is settling into source or pure being and coming back to that place, because then you can sort of take that wherever you go. So as I spew this out, I sort of think to myself, well, talking about roots and having there's 2 places in the world I've put my roots down in physical locations. But I suppose what's happening as I focus on this more and more is I guess roots are going down into my pure being. So that would be roots from my soul and from my personality into my pure being, rather than circumstance, rather than location, and rather than passing emotional states. And I found that for me, that's been quite revelational. And it's not that I haven't had periods. I've had periods of what I would call, in quotes, enlightenment. So long periods of really being identified with my pure being. But as I say in NPA, if I identify with any of them exclusively, you divorce yourself from the others and you become dysfunctional. So that's been my previous experience, whereas this is much more fully aware and allowing of the personality and the soul more than before, and yet somehow rooted in pure being, and that has given me sort of an extra depth of freedom, I think, is the way to say it as I talk about it now. I don't know if that resonates or helps you.
Yeah, I keep thinking, belonging, it's like the settling. It feels like, I remember having this conversation with Red saying, I never belonged anywhere or with anyone. It feels like there is all this duality and I kind of torn between places and people. And he said, oh, of course you belong with yourself. and the concept is simple, but I don't feel like it's sunk into my being that I know in my bones that I belong with myself. I can settle into myself. It's sort of an abstract concept somewhere up in my head.
Yeah, I think it takes... It's one of those things where, again, 20 years ago when I started, well, more than 25 years ago now, I started all this stuff, but I think I was quite anti-practice, whereas now I'm very pro-practice. So that's why I encourage people to practice NPA, to practice, for it to become a habit. And I think because I've dedicated a distinct practice to that focus on, well-being or source or whatever you want to call that. But it takes time, and within it, you're going to meet all of the usual resistances and barriers. But that's the work. You roll your sleeves up and crack on with it. And you know that it's not a straight path. There's going to be the boulders in the way, but nonetheless, that's what it is. So again,
can I ask, Joe? Sorry.
Yeah, go on.
How do you process? Like, how do you do your own? I mean, I occasionally, when stuff comes up, I just write down, find a cookie cutter. Any other ways in which you use NPA to process stuff?
So for me, I do what I recommend, which is I spew into my iPhone. So I'll often do it if I'm driving. So I'll just stick on the app, appropriately positioned on the holder in the car. And I'll just spew. I will I'll let it run, and then I will, stop it, play it back, listen for the cookie cutters. And the way I do it is the minute I hit one, I'll hit pause and just NPA it, and then I'll start playing again. That's the main way that I do NPA. I also journal a lot. So if I journal, and the way I journal is very much like conversations with God. So I have what I would call my guides, and I converse, and they'll often facilitate me through a process. And then if I really get, on occasion, if I get stuck into something and get stuck, then I have people that I go to that I feel I guess safe with and good with, and then they will process me, and that will be, in one case I'm thinking of, she'd pretty much as pure NPA, and another, the guy that I go to is he might include journey work or whatever it takes or those kind of things. So if I'm really stuck and not going through it myself, which is pretty rare, but if I don't, then I'll get help, and that's really important. And I don't only use NPA. If I'm in an emotional state, I'll do a drop through from the journey. Not very often these days, but I might do a campfire like dialogue, and just the way I do in one-to-one sessions with clients. I'll mix it up, whatever is there to do. And a lot of the sort of vibrational stuff lately has been, I guess I've been listening to Abraham Hicks a lot more. I had a real anti-Abraham Hicks for a long time because they used to talk about deliberate creating and that kind of thing, which was at odds with NPA. But if you listen to them now, they talk, which I always said at the time, when they talk about the law of allowing, okay, now I'm there. And that's much more what they talk about. And there's some good stuff in there, and a lot of the work with connecting to well-being or higher self has been done in a
in my own way, but really in the energy or the inspiration of some of the Abraham stuff. And that's been really good to revisit that, because I started listening to that again 20 years ago with a bootleg tape before The Secret and all that. But most of the time it's I meditate and I do NPA when it's there, and I also do my morning prayer a lot as well. So that's something that I do. I'll go for a walk and I'll do a combination of NPA morning prayer. It's more my practice, and then I do my my Abraham thing, which is at the moment is like I call it my vibrational story, which is just focusing on the story beyond reality, which trains my attention and focus to the circumstances energetically, if that makes sense. So, yeah, good question.
Thanks so much for sharing.
You're really welcome. Any questions or feedback? Because that was a lot of chat there, having an open dialogue here. Let's start with Maggie.
It's a little to take in. But very interesting discussion. And when you said barriers, I saw that fence again. And so it's bringing, that I saw when I did it. So it's kind of bringing to me there's some kind of resistance or barrier. I've been saying to people there's something I'm not seeing and I don't know what it is. So maybe there's something deeper going on in there that I haven't discovered yet, and that's why I'm so unsettled.
Well, one thing to say to you, Maggie, is that you're always going to put barriers, no matter, no matter how enlightened you get. There's always more, and if there's more, there's an edge. If there's an edge, there's going to be barrier and all the usual stuff that you meet in the shape of you. So when I say the shape of you, it's like the Enneagram is a good example because it gives 9 numbers, which give a general map or shape of how each of the different types meet their edge. That's how I see the Enneagram. Whether it's, withdrawal or anger and control or whatever it is, when you get to an edge, you're generally going to meet it with that recipe. So that's why people, when they sort of go, I thought I dealt with this stuff, it's coming up again. It's like, well, you have dealt with it in that context, but you've grown like a tree, You have I always use the analogy of the rings of the tree show the light bits of the summer where it grows and the dark bits of the winter where it stops growing and contracts. There's darker bits. So, but if you look at it, it's basically the same shape, whether the tree is 100 years old or 10 years old, it's the same shape. But so you expand, and then you go into your winter and you meet your edge, everything gets a bit darker, and then you go through it and you expand again. So in that way, you're going to meet things in the same way. So you're always going to be putting some kind of barrier. It's good to know the flavor of it, because you get the way you relate to that, which is more the non-personal perspective. How you relate to how you put down the barriers can change, so that going from judgment of it, which puts extra spanners in the work, to acceptance of it and softness with it, and just allowing an openness with it and going, oh yeah, here's my barbed wire fence, rather than, oh, I've done something wrong, I have to fix my past, I have to just put extra layers of challenge, rather than going, oh, here's my thing, and I've been through it before, and I basically know what it is, and yes, I'm going to have to face whatever the edge is and move through it. But that sort of soft relationship with your edges, I've noticed, tends to help you move through them quicker, rather than judging them or making it like there's something you haven't fixed yet, or there's something you haven't got yet. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sort of. Not quite sure. I was going to say how you do that. I see what you're saying, don't judge, rather than judge or fix. Just, I don't know, sit with it.
So I guess one of the analogies that I've used a lot, which really helped me when I first sort of came across it, and I use it generally for the mind. I say, think of the mind as a puppy, because the ego is the same. Think of the ego as a puppy. So if you think of a puppy, then you can't help but have your heart burst open. And yes, God, they can be annoying. They pee on the floor, they chew the furniture, that they can be a nightmare. But you roll them over, tickle them on the tummy. Yes, you need to be firm with them at times and train them. But it's very hard to get really harsh with a puppy. So if you can see these blocks, the sort of ego stuff, if you want to call it that, or that when the mind kicks in as a puppy, then it helps you to shift how you perceive it. And again, the intention of that metaphor or that analogy is to help to soften the relationship with what is a very natural part of you as a human being, which is to have an edge, have an ego, have a personality, have a mind which is there to be fearful and protect you, all of those things. But in the softening of it, again, the puppy, you got to train it. You need to teach. But the way that you do it with a puppy is usually a lot softer than you do it if you're telling yourself it's a monster or a wolf, or I don't know, whatever the thing is that you make it, some demonic shadow. It's always a puppy. It just wants to be loved and have its tummy tickled, sort of roll over and give it some food and cuddles, and it learns to behave itself. Does that help?
Yeah, I guess I just keep getting back into, wanting to figure it out, like, what is the fence about and what's my next step, and, so that's the mind stuff getting in instead of just being, I guess, like you say.
So that's a great example. So the mind stuff is right there. So, oh, mind stuff, bless you. Of course you want to know the next step. You want to figure it out, you want to plan, you want a tick list. I get it. It's okay. We haven't got one. It's okay. I get that you want it. We're just going to sit in peace and wait for the animation to come. Yeah. I know you're a little puppy. You want to pull on the thing, but right now it's not pull on the thing time. I want to sit by the fire and watch TV. So you come sit next to me. I'll give you a cuddle. No, you don't pull the thing now. No, come up here, sit down. Down. There. I love you. It's okay. Yeah. So it's so that's your wanting to get what's next is the little puppy wanting to tug on the toy or the furniture.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's causing you stress, it's not realigned. If it's causing you that kind of unnecessary suffering, then it's not time. And there are times when yes, it's time to play with the toy. It's time to make a list, and that's animation. That's the knowing the truth of what's here. But if it's like nagging at you in a way that pisses you off, it's probably just the puppy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that helps.
Okay, fantastic.
Thank you.
Joanna, what did you want to put in there?
Well, I just found it very interesting. I very much like the idea of treating it as a puppy, whatever it is that you find annoying about yourself, so that you're treating it in a much more kindly fashion. But when you were talking about your how you do your work with yourself, and your morning walk when you're saying your prayers and your meditations and you're doing things while you're traveling, and it just seemed to me that your days seem to be a wonderful progression from one soul image to the next. And I thought, well, how do you get all that into a day? Because my day is so taken up with doing things, stuff, got to be done. Somebody else wants something. And I think, well, I'd quite like some time to breathe in between all this.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a really good question. And that used to be the thing that blocked me from doing all of that. But if you come back to sort of the NPA principles, which is, everything is energy, and many people come back to me and say they NPA, which is what I do, NPA before something. So that's getting the energy clear before something, and it doesn't take very long. It's one of the things that I love about NPA. It doesn't take very long. So before a client, before a call, what would I like to experience on this call? Do an NPA. Often in those situations, the cookie cutter will just kind of come in consciousness. Doesn't need a spew necessarily. So NPA is quick and easy. You can do it as you walk along. Very simple. The morning walk, I don't do every single morning, but I do take myself out and along the canal, and part of that is it's important to me to get out the house, get into nature, and just while I'm walking, I'll just do my prayers. So it's part of the same thing. And then meditations, I don't do epic hour-long meditations. 5 to 15 maximum. I think I did a 15-minute one this morning, but that was longer than usual. And it's just simply just to stop the mind, get still. I don't do guided visualizations or any of those things. It's literally, I listen to the ticking clock or my breath if there's no ticking clock. And again, do the puppy thing with the mind if it's busy. But basically just bring myself into a space where I stop, and that's just very simple. And that is a nearly daily practice. It's not very often that I don't do that at some point in the day. So, but how do I fit it in? Well, because I have come to the understanding that it's the vibrational work or the intentional work or whatever you want to call that is most important. So I talk in NPA about, I don't do something unless it's animated. There's that blog I wrote, which is, speak when words speak you, be quiet when they don't. So in order to listen for or hear or receive what is a truly animated action, it's better when you're still. It's easier when you're still. You can do it when you're busy, but it's easier when there's a stillness inside. So for me, it's about putting the horse before the cart in that context. So I do a lot less than I used to do. I had a period like in 2012, I was so dewy. It didn't help. It exhausted me, but it was doing coming from a tick list, from this is what you're supposed to do. You've got a business. You have to focus on the bottom line. You have to do all this marketing stuff. I don't do that. I take care of the vibration, and then when the animation is there, when the movement is there, and everything's lined up, I notice I get loads done in a short space of time, and it's much more effective. Classic example is this week. I've been thinking about doing a new, what they call a funnel, a marketing funnel, which is you have to do a sign-up page and then a follow-up page, and there's a lot involved in it. And part of me was sort of going through the process of, am I procrastinating? I should have done this by now, blah, 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 blah. But I knew that it just wasn't there. And then suddenly, bang, actually last week, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday, I did about a week's work in a day. And it just, but because I was committed to the sort of lining up with myself and where I truly was, rather than trying to, again, to use another analogy, to get the flower to open before it was ready. And again, that's a practice. That's taken me, a long time to really surrender and trust. So I could look at my life and go, I don't do a lot. You could say I'm quite lazy, or I'm quite indulgent in the things I choose to do. But so, I mean, in terms of with the August Abundance Assembly that I did a few years ago, when I was developing that, I realized that for me, the horse and the cart, the horse was pleasure and the cart was money, whereas I had money, the cart, in front of the horse. So another underlying guiding principle for me is, does it bring me pleasure? And that's transformed my abundance, So, and it's a similar thing. It's like get into focus on being aligned, rooting into the source, if you like. That's the priority. And then the action that is the best, most aligned actions that will support the intentions and prayers that I hold will come when it's ripe, and then it's much more highly leveraged. In a way, which is what NPA does in general. It means that those few little words, because they tap into something truly powerful, they're very highly leveraged. So a little bit can go a long way, especially if you get a really fully animated cookie cutter. That's why people have those 18 years of depression gone in 2 minutes kind of stories, because everything is just lined up. And the NPA process is a very highly leveraged, energetically process. So I guess what I've been doing in the last year or two, especially, is coming into a wider experience of that. I guess really putting the energy first and the action second, putting pleasure first, and the abundance just follows. It just follows along. I used to get into panics about money and all sorts. I don't even think about it anymore. I just don't. I wouldn't say. I haven't got a Rolls Royce out the front or anything like that. But that's not for me. It's never been about that for me. It's just I feel abundant, I feel rich, and I have enough for what I want to do at this point. And if I inspire to do something more, then I know that will come. And I'm not in a hurry for it, because if I had 100,000 times more money in my account, it would only be so I could do something, and I'd only do something so I could feel something. What would I want to feel? Aligned, connected, happy, having pleasurable experiences. So I've got that already. And of course growth, which implies the edges, which implies the shit that comes up along the way, and that's all fine with me.
In my own experience, if I may speak for a minute,
Sure.
I just love being in the garden. It doesn't matter what I'm doing, what needs to be done, but just to be out in the fresh air with the flowers and the birds, that gives me great pleasure and satisfaction. So am I allowed to think of that as a form of meditation? Because basically that's what it is, because I'm just thinking about what I'm doing. I'm not thinking about anything else particularly. I'm just being where I need to be.
Absolutely. I mean, I used to say a lot that if you can't meditate while you're doing the dishes, you don't understand meditation. So even though I do at the moment, for several months I've come back to a sitting, breathing practice of meditation. Generally, I consider those things meditation. So, like one of the things I started doing is I were in Glastonbury and I picked up some charcoals and started drawing. That's art is a meditation. It's something new for me. But if in the garden gives you that sense of, what you're describing is when you're in the garden, you're aligned with pure being. You're aligned with source, and you know that because of the sense of pleasure and wellness and wholeness that you feel there. And I'm guessing you feel a sense of timelessness when you're in the garden. So that is a circumstance which you can get access to source, and therefore is a meditation. The growth aspect of that is, from the non-personal perspective, is to take the circumstances out of the equation. Not so you don't go in the garden, because that's a wonderful thing to do. It's like in relationship. Just because I feel whole and complete in myself doesn't mean I deny myself a relationship and all the joys of that and challenges of that. It's just that there isn't the need of it as extra. So with the garden thing, one thing you can do so that you can expand the circumstances under which you have that experience is to NPA with that. My example of that, a good one from a few years ago, is I had a client come along. She came for journey work, but within the process at the time, NPA came up because she came to me. She said, "I want to experience oneness." And I was like, "Okay, you've read the journey book. I get it. Fine." So we did the process. She got into a source, but it wasn't quite as expected, right? The expectation of what thoughts will feel like. At that time I still do 5 rhythms dancing. I said, I got this thing, you might want to try 5 rhythms. She said, that sounds really good. She liked dancing. Off she goes. She comes back for the next session. She said, oh my God. She said, I went to 5 rhythms. And it's like, it was amazing. I felt a oneness while I was dancing. She said, and this is the thing, she said, I get it. In order to feel oneness, I just need to dance. So what she'd done in that moment is she'd limited that sense of oneness to the activity of dance. It's not like I said, stop dancing, go dance. But I said, you can just work with NPA. So it's not just the dance. It's not the experience isn't personal to the activity. So the descriptions that you make of that you feel when you're in the garden, you can NPA those. They're not just personal to the gardening, and they can begin to sort of flood or seep into the rest of your life as well, which doesn't take away from the garden, but allows it to come to you elsewhere as well. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. But it's also, when you said absolutely, after I described what I felt, it just brought up a whole lot of emotion of relief and release that this could be part of what I aim to do, but never get around to doing because I haven't got time. But if it is actually happening of its own accord, because I happen to be in the garden, and that I can bring that into other things, then that is a huge lesson.
Yeah. Yeah, I would really give yourself that. Really, it is a meditation for you. You're describing it. I mean, one of the things that I often chuckle at is all of the, generally, I'm going to be gender focused here, but generally, women will look at men who go fishing, especially women who are conscious and say, he's doesn't meditate. Fishing is such a meditation. If you think about it, you throw a float in the water, you stare at a fixed point and do nothing else.
Usually in a beautiful place.
In nature. And so
yes.
Why is fishing one of the most popular sports? I think it's the top sport in this country, and especially for men, of course. But it's meditation. Yes. They would never call it meditation, but actually that's what it is. And if you talk to people, what do you know about fishing? Well, I just sit and my mind wanders and, I'm just there in nature and, I catch a fish, that all feels good, and I can play with the tackle and do various boy things. But fundamentally, I'm staring at a float and waiting and getting into an allowing space for the fish to come and jump on the hook. So... It's so that there's so many ways you can meditate, and if you love something, why wouldn't you do it? It's like it's always a clue. For me, playing the guitar when I was 8 years old and picked up a guitar, I wouldn't have thought about it, but it's a meditation. I had a talent for it. I loved it, and of course, I naturally kept doing it and got very good at it. But even now, if I pick up the guitar, which I don't do nearly as much as I used to. But it's a meditation. It takes me into that space of that is source and my genius coming through me, through my fingers, through the sound, the creations, all of those kind of things. So yeah, you can tick your meditation box with your gardening time.
Thank you for that.
So there you go. I hope you enjoyed this episode, this insight into the NPA Community Calls as well. If you like what you hear, do go ahead and tell someone about us. Just tell them to go and find Be a Brilliant Human with Joel Young, or just send them straight to the podcast website, which is www.beabrillianthuman.com. And if you, whatever episode you want to go to, this one being 40, just slash and then the numbers, this one will be /40. And remember, you can go and get hold of the NPA process sheet. If you'd like to get hold of that, just go to joelyoungmpa.com and you'll find it there, or anywhere on the podcast website as well. And those show notes will have a breakdown of everything that I've covered in today's episode. I hope you have a fabulous, fabulous week. I will see you next time. Until then, cue the moo.